students, that was all the Black people in the Black Student Union.
But did that feel like a protection, or did it feel like an isolation?
At that point, I didn't realize it was protection. I didn't think of it as an isolation, because I didn't experience racism then the way I experienced it as an adult. There were very few small incidents that I never would have connected. I think that there were enough, so few Black people that everyone knew them. So there was no fear of this Black person, because you know who this person is, you know their parents, they sit next to you in school, you kind of know them. So I think there was a difference there. And then to go to college in Boston and realize that there's a whole other world out there, being told by Black people I'm not Black enough, and knowing I'm not white, there's this, I guess it's a dichotomy, in my life. And having not, I think this is a big argument against white people adopting Black children, which for the record, I think is fine. But there is the argument that they might not be taught their history. They might not be taught, to honor and cherish their Blackness. But as I've grown, I've been able to do that. And not to say that my parents didn't honor my Blackness. My father was from Ghana, and one of my fondest memories actually is of my mother reading to me a newspaper article about the fishermen in Ghana who were, this is a fond memory of the fishermen in Ghana who were starving because the tuna population was sweeping up every fish. The tuna fishermen were sweeping up every fish, and these families couldn't survive. But she was giving me a connection to let helping me know that I was part of something else, something bigger. But nonetheless, still, I know that I need to learn from my Black brothers and sisters. And so this was a wonderful opportunity to do that. Honestly, my daughter going to college has taught me so much. I've learned, she's a little, she says, tear the whole system down, start over. We can't tear it down,
Well, it's hard, I think, for everyone is that in order to understand, you have to understand that there is like this big conspiracy. And I think that's why it's hard for white people who aren't part of the conspiracy, because you really have to say, like, like, think about the Holocaust. Like, you have to be able to grasp the fact that a whole country tried to annihilate a whole part of their population. And that's big to get your brain around that.
Yes. And like Wyman said, that there's a whole country of people who were taught that specifically did not happen. We only believe it because we were taught it in school by people in authority who told us this was true, who made us read books and biographies and memoirs of people who lived it. And so for a whole segment of our population to not have experienced what the Black people are experiencing, or like you said, you're not part of this conspiracy, how can we understand? And the only thing I kind of think of is when, like Brett Kavanaugh was being confirmed, and we just finally said, listen, a woman says this happened, believe her. And that's how I feel about this. At some point, you just have to believe it. We're all saying this happened. You have to kind of believe it. You have to take that leap, accept it. Yeah.
And it's not like a credibility issue. It's just that it requires that you admit something about yourself or about your race or whatever that's uncomfortable, that's unpleasant.
Yes, because we identify with a larger group. And if you're going to say that my group is this terrible thing, that I don't want to believe that. I don't want to be part of that, whether I literally am specifically today or not. Yeah, it's completely understandable. And at the same time, sometimes I sort of think about how historically maybe a poor white person can feel like, well, at least I'm not Black. There would be, There's always something. Yeah.
So I have that to lean on anyway. At least
Right.
that didn't happen.
At least if my hip gets better and I can get out there and get a job, I can get a job, or whatever the issue is,
But
And I think there is, I don't want to say a pleasure, but I've always wondered if there might be sort of a level of relief for the poor white community, and that they're not the, I don't want to say bottom of the barrel, but do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do.
Yes, yeah.
And I think, I've actually seen a very ugly sort of superiority in a very poor, like what we call white trash kind of a
Right,
family, where
yes.
they have that kind of superiority, and that they would look down on a family of color or an immigrant
Yes,
family or
yeah, an
something like
immigrant
that, because
family. Yes.
because they're not, almost like, and this is a terrible analogy and it's probably very insulting, but it just popped into my head, is like, someone who struggles with a weight problem sees someone heavier than them, and
Oh,
they say,
right,
oh,
yes.
well, I'm not that bad. At
Right,
least I'm
right.
not.
I'm not that far gone.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes,
exactly.
yeah. It's
But
like, yeah.
I wish I don't know, I always, you don't want to say the wrong thing and be offensive, you want to be loving and stuff. But I also wonder, how do you feel that any of the problems that folks are struggling with are, so there's this thing that happens in corporate America
Mm-hmm.
where, a man will help another man to get ahead. But
Mm-hmm.
when a woman gets in a position of power, she's much more competitive and much less likely to help another woman get ahead.
Yes, yeah.
And so I wonder if some of that also happens, like, you start off in a disadvantaged situation, and then you make yourself, you make good, you make good, you're able to
Yes,
get to
yeah.
college, or create, you invent something, you do something to get yourself out of that. And then you
Right.
leave and
Yes.
say, oh, thank God I'm out of that situation, rather than
Right.
coming back and saying, I want to teach my neighbors and
Right.
my friends how I did this, and teach them about the stock market, and teach them about real estate, and teach them about things that will help them to also
Mm-hmm.
better themselves.
Well, sort of a Black man or woman going to college and becoming a big executive in a big company and going to live in a big house in Weston. Why not buy your big house in Roxbury and be with
Right.
that sort of thing?
Well,
There
become a
is,
role model, to become a
you're
role
right,
model.
stay here, become a role model.
Yeah.
There is, and I can't remember who it was, if it was Cornel West or Henry Louis Gates, who had, in one of his books, had written about you turn around and you help up the people behind you. You help the people coming behind you come up the ladder. You help them. And I'm not sure that that's something the Black community has always been the best at. I personally think it's because we're each trying to survive in our individual stressful little, I don't want to say hell because it's but you're in your own little stressful bubble, trying to live your life, trying to survive, trying to not become exhausted by the life that you're living. So maybe that doesn't happen as often as it should. Sometimes once you get to be the Black person who is there, maybe you don't want this other Black person to bring you down. You know what I mean? I'm not like this person, I'm not like that person. I'm sure there's always an element of that in any sort of segment of the population. But I know that I've always wondered, I've lamented the fact that we haven't yet been able to lift our whole selves up. But it's because there is something there pushing down on our whole, the whole, all of us. Every time you go up a step, someone takes the next rung out of the ladder, and it's hard. You don't want to sound like, I'm a complaining person, the world's against me. But now if we stop and think about it, that's what the America we've created is, you know? And now I forget what your original question was.
Well, what you were saying, I was talking about women in corporate America, but I
Oh,
think the reason
yes.
that happens in corporate America is because, and I think it's maybe the same problem, is
Yeah.
that you're not, a woman isn't getting ahead, and this is a huge generalization, obviously,
Right,
but,
right.
a woman in corporate America has managed to claw her way to the top. She's,
Right.
she's at the glass ceiling, or she's shattered it, and she's really accomplished
Mm-hmm.
something. She didn't do that so she could help up another woman. She did it so she could be more like a white man, right?
Ah.
So is that what's happening? Like, you accomplish something, you become a millionaire, and you want to go to Weston so you can be like a white person, rather than
So
going back and saying, I did this to raise up my whole
the whole,
community.
right. I'm sure for some people, yes. But I think sometimes there's the feeling of there's only room for one of us up here. And I would suspect that's for women too. When you get, there's only, me working in a kitchen. So I'm the head pastry chef. Now they're not going to have a sous chef and executive chef woman. There's only room for one female lead in this production, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think there's an element of that for Black America too. Once you get there was only room for one of us, but it's all changing now. Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. But I think that's a part of it. Maybe we didn't stop to think that there is room for all of us up here.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
Yeah.
as I think it was Lucky who was saying that, you're not the minority. So why aren't you,
Yeah.
why didn't the slaves take over the plantation? Why didn't the Jews kill the
Yeah. Yeah.
you've got the
And like
power, you've got
Kimberly
the
said,
numbers.
this indoctrination is goes both ways. It's on both sides. And I kind of wonder if that's what Kanye was trying to say. He said some ridiculous thing about Black people being slaves for 400 years. Why were we slaves for 400 years? I wonder if he had some more gracious thing that he was trying to say. But yeah, that indoctrination is powerful. You know, it's a lot. Obviously, it's taken generations.
And Kimberly and I, when we first started talking about, when I asked her about using the Zoom line and stuff, we were talking about the media and the role of the media. And that gets into like implicit bias and how much brainwashing has been happening throughout all these years for everyone, not just for whites, but for Blacks as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
About your own power and your own ability and your own beauty. I mean, I wish I could find it. Didn't look for it ahead of time, but where a Black child chose to play with a white doll because they thought it was prettier, right?
There's pretty. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where does that come from, right? I mean, that's.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Black children wanting yellow hair, one of my brothers, when he was in kindergarten, they were supposed to write, this is a very dated assignment, about what they want their future husband or wife to be like. And my wife will have yellow hair and she will be very nice and cook dinner.
But us too, we're supposed to be blonde. Like every woman, right, we're all supposed to be blonde. And that's like, I mean, the Aryan brotherhood here.
Yes, they did it. Yeah, they got us all. Yeah, it's a very I have noticed, just in speaking with my daughter, that I have had a sort of a space of privilege in being lighter. While I was growing up in high school and starting the dating thing, there was a point, maybe later in high school, I had never thought anyone would find me attractive. But then when people did start to see me attractive, it was like, well, what are they after? What's going on here? And I assumed that the Latino guys liked me because I looked like a Latina girl. And I assumed that white boys liked me because I was interesting or unique or, a fetish, exotic. And Black guys liked me because I was light, and for years later, my daughter's going off to the prom, and she said to me something about, yeah, but the guys don't dance with the dark girls. And she goes to a school that's 50% Black and 30% Latino. You know, she goes to a very mixed school. And it just dawned on me that this is still a thing where and she's a beautiful girl. I mean, I know all teenagers have that sort of, I'm not good enough. But for her to be in the same position where, well, I'm too dark, they don't dance with the dark girls. And I tried to have a conversation with her about it, and she said, you wouldn't understand because you're light. And I was like, oh, interesting. She thinks I have the advantage here. And meanwhile, it turned out we were both thinking the same thing, that when a guy likes us, it's because there's some sort of exotic thing about us that they're after, not big, you know. And, you know, there's a little sadness that I hadn't been able to prevent that for her, or help her build the confidence to overcome that. But maybe it's because that is how society is. This is how the community has created and sustained ideals of beauty, in, you know, from both sides.
It's not, Sarah, I had those exact same feelings when I was a kid. Like, you know, why does this person just wants sex? You know,
just
why
want
do they
sex,
want
yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's there for everybody. And
it's for everybody,
partly
right?
that transition, right? Going from being a child to being an adult, and your discomfort with your body, and, you know, all the crap that's heaped on you from your parents.
Mm-hmm.
It's a universal thing, you know?
Universal, yeah. You're looking for what's different about you, why they don't like you. It's because of the thing that's different.
It's an ulterior motive. This person has an ulterior motive, you know?
Yes, there's always an ulterior.
You know, when I was introducing Kimley, you know, I was feeling very uncomfortable because I was reflecting back on the article that I had read that I mentioned in there, where, you know, oh, don't tell us that we're like articulate and stuff. But the fact is that every single person on this call is much more well-educated and much more intelligent. Well, maybe not much more intelligent, but much more well-educated and well-read than I am. So when I introduce Kimley as being someone who's very, you know, intelligent and articulate, it's not like, oh, that's a novelty because she's Black. It's that it's something I respect about her. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh God, if she takes this the wrong way. And I just got...
Mm-hmm. Well, because I think that we know in context, and because you know her and she knows you, and we're in a specific context where this is what you were looking for, is some articulate, you know, a way, somebody who can voice the opinion in a clear and elegant way, I think, perhaps.
Yeah,
although
exactly.
Maybe not elegant, but yes.
But who's not just going to get in here and go, you know, you suck, you know, you people, your whole, like someone who's going to actually have something to say beyond the anger, beyond the
useful.
Yeah, something that could be helpful. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Something that might help people to enlarge their, you know, brains or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yes. Well, it did that for me, for sure. I really appreciated it. And it sort of reminded me that I have a stack of books of my daughter's from her college classes that I still need to read. And I'm lucky to have them because apparently they've all sold out online.
Suddenly, because racism's now the new, you know.
Something happened. Yeah. So that, you know, it's exciting. But that article you sent, every single one of those phrases, yes. And it is just something about those phrases. I don't know if it's because we hear them a lot, or but just there's a certain sound to them, you know, when you hear those, that is, I don't know if it's disappointing. It's depending who you're hearing it from, you know, it can be very disappointing to hear someone say that, or it just brings feelings that you know, unnecessary. Yeah. So I'm definitely that article with people. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people say things like that, like, you're so articulate. They think they're being nice. They think they're giving you a compliment, you know. I have so many times people have asked me where I'm from. And I say, I'm from here. Oh, I thought you might be from another country, or I thought you might be from somewhere else because the way you speak. And I was just like, it's very strange, because speak like everyone else from where I grew up.
Yeah.
It's not very far from here, or being grateful that my name is Sarah Elizabeth, so I can get through that first, pass through the resumes, or, I can get that phone, or when I speak on the phone, I sound, you don't know what I am, but
It's interesting. I had a
yeah.
client who's Asian, and she said, "Oh, people always ask me where I'm from,"
Yeah.
and she finds it offensive. And I said, "Well, tell them you're from Texas, because that's where she grew up."
That's, yes.
But yeah,
Yes.
it's like, I'm from the United States, right?
United
I'm one
States.
of you, just because I'm Asian.
Yeah.
Hello.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. But
Yeah.
well, I was just going to say, one of the things that, one of the things that she talks about is this thing, oh, I wish I had the courage to wear my hair like that or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought, well, people have said that to me when I let my hair go gray.
Right.
And
Yeah.
clearly they have the ability to go gray, right? But they
Yes.
just don't have the courage.
They
So I
don't
feel
have
like,
the courage.
that is actually a compliment, because what they're really saying, they're not saying, oh, I wish I had black hair. They're really saying, I wish I had the courage to be myself.
To be myself. Well, hair is a big issue
I
for
know.
black women. So I rarely wear my hair loose because I often worry that it's intimidating, that I'm going to present as a certain type of woman, or like, and often it's quite big if I let it dry now. Like that person is very different from this person, or
Yeah.
when I wear the twist,
Yeah.
I will be reacted to in a very different way. And so it's kind of ironic, that particular phrase, because I do often have to feel brave to wear my hair like this, because I'm taking on another layer of maybe like, I have another layer of fear, I guess you would say, when I go out into the world and I have my hair very very natural and very African,
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny that
and
you say
yeah.
that, because, this is the first time I've seen you with your hair down, and I think
Oh,
it
right.
softens you a little bit. I think it's very
Oh,
becoming.
interesting. See, I would never have gone to a job interview with my hair like this, or some of the catering jobs that I do, I wouldn't, because I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, or I don't want to,
Yeah. Yeah.
but why is that on me?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that sort of thing is not something I have thought about until more recent times, grow until, I guess you could say, there's sort of two different parts of my life, when I don't want to say separated from my white family, but now I'm immersed in, I'm not surrounded by the white Italian American culture,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a whole different world. And actually, my daughter wrote her college essay about her afro. There was one point when, I don't know if she was a freshman or sophomore, where she just started to wear an afro, and how just that one change carries so much weight in this world. How her hairstyle carries so much weight, and is so. I think hair in general is very much personal, attached to people's identity. But for her, where at one point wearing an afro was a unique and courageous thing, and then by the time she graduated high school, everyone's got an afro, and it's a regular thing. Where at first she had to like be brave, and what, I'm gonna be natural, I'm gonna wear my hair like this because that's how I was born and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
To then she's just like one person following a trend. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's interesting how it just can really affect you. It is part of you being you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny too. I mean, I put my foot in it, I guess, during a call. I have a friend who, it's actually Ione's mom, has a
Mhm.
Saturday conversation, basically based around the book Think and Grow Rich. And, they're talking about each Saturday, they talk about a different aspect of the book. But they had a person on there who had written a book about, hair. I forget what the name of the book was, but it was basically about, hair and all the kind of stuff that goes around with it. And you can participate. And I was trying to be like, we've all been raised to hate our hair. That's what I was trying to say. Like, society has told us that no matter what your hair is, it's not good enough.
It's not right.
I mean, my hair is not fluffy enough. It's
not right. It's not what people want. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I tried to like say that, and it was just like, oh, you just don't get it. You don't get it. Like, man, I hate my hair just as much as you do. No, you can't. You can't. You might hate your hair, but society doesn't hate your hair.
Oh, right.
And I think that's what. And I was like, I'm just trying to like, we're part of us is the ones of us that aren't trying to hold people down are searching for common ground, which also makes us insensitive, right? Because it's like, oh.
Yes. It's a very tough place to be in. Definitely. It really is. I mean, obviously for everybody, it's, I don't know how to explain. Like, I remember, I don't know how long ago it was, but there were some women who worked in a hotel in Boston who had their hair in braids, and they were told they couldn't wear their hair in braids. And to me, that's a very tame African-American hairstyle or African hairstyle, where I think of that as, it looks much more like white person hair than this looks like white person hair. I couldn't understand that. And I'm pretty sure they sued, and there have been incidences in schools. So I wonder if they're just saying, like, you can hate your hair, and your hair may not be approved by, men like long hair, men don't want gray hair. They want blonde. They want long, luscious blonde, flowing hair. But you wouldn't get told to go home from your job for wearing a hair that is a style that's culturally appropriate to you, for a style that has been worn for centuries in your hair, or for just letting your hair do what it does. Imagine some people going into work with those big afros. I remember at Baker's, we had a girl who had long braids, and none of the leads could figure out what to tell her to do with her hair. And they would come to me and be like, oh, she needs hair. And I was like, tell her what you tell everyone else about their hair.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be pulled back. And, what else can you say? Just because she has a lot of it, that doesn't mean the rules are going to be different for her. I don't understand why there should be a big conference about it, But yeah, for some reason it's a loaded issue. Yeah.
Do you think it would be different if right from the beginning, there was never an attempt to, to calm your hair, if like everybody just did their thing with their hair right along, and just, do you think that would be better or worse?
I don't know, because I think from way back, we've had to fight being looked at as savages or monkeys, or I think all through history, the image that we've been fighting has sort of forced that sort of a change. Can you imagine in, the 1800s, a woman with a big afro, she would never be taken seriously if she went to go somewhere. I think something else I kind of noticed is that Michelle Obama wears her hair different since she's left the White House. And I kind of feel sad that perhaps she knew that while they were there, she had to look a little more middle America, perhaps, is the word. But I don't think there ever was a time where we could have been completely natural, and from the moment, I don't see that. Ideally, I don't see a moment where we could have ever been safe being, having that sort of freedom with ourselves, with our bodies. Yeah.
It's horrible.
Right. And that kind of tells you like the depth of it, where something that is, I've never been able to get up out of bed and just leave the house. I see girls on the street all the time who've just gotten up and put a ponytail and left the house, for something that's so simple in so many people's lives. It's a huge, long line of history for us,
Yeah.
That's weird. That goes back to a scary place, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. It's more than unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What's the answer? You know what I mean? How can we move forward and have begin to, again, this is something that Kimberly and I were talking about this morning. It seems like it has to come from just getting to know each other better, right? More integration, more.
Yeah. And I think that's what people really tried to do. And that's what sort of, I think schools is a good example. You've probably heard of Metco in Boston. It's a busing program. I don't remember when it was started, but to bring students from the city to suburban schools. So you can go to school in Weston or Lexington or whatever, where I kind of think that the benefit was more for those children who otherwise wouldn't have interacted with other Black children. And, so I feel like there was an attempt to force everyone to get to know each other at some little levels here and there. And, like I mentioned, a couple of years ago when the push came from West Roxbury and Rosendale to go back to neighborhood schools in Boston, it's like, I know what you really mean here. You're saying you don't want your child to have to take a bus across the city. Well, there's a reason your child has to take a bus across the city, because if we don't make him take a bus across the city, he might grow up not knowing how to interact with people who don't look just like him, and so I do think that is personally, I think that is part of the solution,
Yeah. There's this whole study, all kinds of studies about where you're I don't know, there was this I should get my facts straight, before I speak. This is why everybody on the call is so much more articulate than I am.
I know it.
But they had, it was like in a subdivision type of thing, and some people had doors that were facing into like a courtyard where they all would come out the door and see each other, and other people's doors were facing like the street, so they could just walk right across the street and get in their car. And so the people whose houses faced the courtyard, they had more friends. They were more, just because they were
neighborly.
They were more neighborly. They were forced to see each other every morning, forced to say good morning, kind of forced to get to know each other. Whereas the people who just could walk straight to their car, they might not know anybody on the street.
That's true.
It's just proximity, proximity is it's so key. And if we just, had more proximity, right? Maybe that's, I don't know. Then there's not like this thing like you're Black and I'm white. It's like, oh, here's the person from next door. You're just a person.
My neighbor. This is
my neighbor.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I used to live in West Roxbury, and everything's much more spread apart. And I live in Roxbury now, and we are on top of each other. I can literally hear a conversation in my neighbor's house, but yeah, the neighbors are closer here than the neighbors were when I lived there. It's very interesting. You're what do they say? You're drawn together, you're pushed together, Yeah.
And when that happens, then because there's some kind of from stuff that I've read, there's like not biological, but instinctual, I guess, for protection. Like there's like an instinctual thing with us and them. Who's the us and who's the them? And that's why, like, when you look at Hitler, there was actually propaganda that he put out so that you could identify Jews.
Oh,
This
who
is what their
was, yeah,
noses are going to look like. This is what he created a them for the
yes,
whole country to be against so
yeah,
they could unite.
mm-hmm.
And that's like
Yes, this is
politics
what your enemy
101.
looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what with the Muslims, like they're perfect because they've got the, they
Yes.
dress different, they
Very
look
easy to
different.
pick them out.
Exactly. And that's like like I said, politics 101. If you want to have an us, you've got to create a them. And that's,
Yeah. Yeah. And they have. Yeah. That's true.
and if everybody looks a lot alike, then the differentiation has to be more minute,
Yes, yes, yeah, exactly.
Oh, we're all white here in Germany. Well, that's okay because you've
That's
got
all
a
right.
bigger
Yeah.
nose than I do. Oh,
That's
okay. Well,
right.
that
Yeah.
makes me better, right? Small noses unite. Like
Yes.
what the hell is that?
Here they
But
find it.
but it's a thing, that we can, or I shouldn't say that it's a thing that people who want power can manipulate.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, they're gonna find it no matter what, and that's in every. I think that applies to all sorts of situations, like you say, where there is a power dynamic. There, have to find the.
Well, there's
other.
I'll try to find a copy of it to put a link to, folks who might be listening, but there is a study, it's a very famous study, which naturally I can't remember the name of or whatever, but basically it was like a college class, and they, as a social experiment, they divided the class into two, and it was completely random, like year one, year two, year one, year two, like just everybody count off, all the ones go over here, all the twos go over here, and the ones, or one of the groups became the prisoners and the other group became the guards, right? Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah.
And they just, within a week, the guards were brutalizing the prisoners when they, just the day before they were all classmates. Why does that? Why is that inside of us, right? I'm sure there's some good reason when we were, living, in the woods
sort
or
of
whatever. Survival
instinct.
mechanism, but it needs to go, right?
It does, right? Yeah, and that's some might argue perhaps that's what happens with the police force.
I think so.
Yeah, this is, and that is what happens in the prisons. Yeah.
I took a class. I'm bringing up a lot of this Hitler stuff because I took a really great class when I was in college about the Holocaust and how that can happen, and how you take a normal human being who now can be manipulated into brutalizing a former neighbor. How do you do that? How does that happen? And
someone they would never have seen as a threat to anything.
Exactly.
Down the street. Yeah.
Yep. And you can see what happened. They took away their property, right? Like what Lucky was talking about. They took away all their real estate and they put them in camps, and they did, because I my question was always, why didn't they fight back? Why didn't they fight back? There were so many of them. Why didn't they fight back? Well, there's that. This can't really be happening. Could people really be so brutal?
People really do this.
Yeah, that was a whole thing against them. But also, what we don't realize is that this wasn't something that happened overnight, right? It took years, and they were malnourished.
Yes. Yeah.
They were already, in a bad place before they ever got sent to concentration camps and stuff.
Yeah. You're yeah, like you said, their real estate, their property, still being found today. It's insane. And then when you think about that, it's amazing to think that someone might think that didn't happen. It's strange, Yeah. But I was talking to a friend of mine today, and we were sort of lamenting that a mutual acquaintance of ours appears to be a Trump supporter. And we both came to the conclusion that we really like this person. And while it matters that this person supports Trump, it doesn't make us not love this person, doesn't make us, we lose a little respect perhaps. But we realize we have to perhaps help to, well, it was sort of you know, how do you, she's not an idiot, but how do you speak to this person who has this point of view? And my friend was like, no, I just can't talk about it because I know she's not going to listen. And for me, it was, you have to try, you have to look for that opening. You have to keep, find
Have an
that little
intervention.
right. Yes. Plant the seed, like the gentleman were saying, drop the, just drop that knowledge and yeah, let it see if it blossoms.
Yeah.
But it's, how did she come at this day and age now, come to the conclusion that that person is the right person to lead this country? And my friend said, but if you look at a newspaper like the New York Times, I said, yes, for us, that's the gold standard of journalism. You can look there to everything is punctually correct, grammatically correct, spelled right. They've checked their sources. But to someone who believes that Trump is doing the right thing or is going to be good for this country in any way, that is not a newspaper that person's looking at. And I said, if you look at some of the information that is being disseminated to Trump supporters or likely Trump supporters, the things they're saying are so ridiculous to me or to someone like-minded that it's overwhelming to think about how do you counteract that. Somehow they've been made to believe that this ridiculous thing is true. I've seen everything from not the simple, but President Obama was not born in America to Michelle Obama is actually a man. Like things are so ridiculous, things that aren't even relevant. First of all, who cares? Like the Hillary Clinton having a child sex ring in the basement of a pizza restaurant. We have to keep in mind, but these are the things that these people are believing. And so it's overwhelming to know there is an indoctrination going on. And it's crazy. It's totally conceivable. People are easily indoctrinated by the craziest things. Somehow it happens. And, I hope there's some experts out there who can help us figure out the antidote to all of this. Yeah. But I think in the situation of the racism, it does seem to be a lot of hard work and awkward, uncomfortable talks and opening of people's hearts and minds. That's difficult for everybody,
Yeah.
And combined with that sort of, it's not my way of doing things, but breaking windows gets attention, blocking traffic gets attention, that this sort of thing, kneeling during the national anthem gets attention. Things don't change immediately, but over time it does. Sometimes you have to do something to get the attention, and then you can, maybe that's the foot in the door, that's the opening the window a crack so you can climb in and start to say little things. But
yeah,
it's definitely, obviously it's a long road because we've been at this.
Yeah.
Our ancestors have been at this for so long.
Yeah.
My daughter has a t-shirt that I love that says, "I am my ancestors' wildest dream."
Ah.
And every now and then I think about that as sort of a motivation, like they need us to continue forward and keep going.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. Good one.
Yeah, I'm every so often confronted or reminded or whatever you want to call it by how much I don't know or how much I don't understand and
Chill.
but I think I don't want to say it's a two-way street, but I guess I feel like we have more in common than maybe we realize, despite whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's living in the same country, there's a lot of shared experiences that, you know, a lot of similarities, like you say, there is a lot in common, but I think there's a lot that you don't see about our lives. And stuff you might never see, and stuff that you might not know, you won't know about unless we come right out and say it.
Yeah.
But that could be true too, that there's a whole other side to your lives that we don't know. You know, like you say, you know, could be a two-way street that way. But I would say there's definitely I can't speak for anyone. Like Wyman says, I'm one person, so I'm one woman, and I can speak for myself. But there is a whole way of living my life that I have had to adopt just to make it look like I'm living my life the way you are, so to speak. In that there's a myriad of things that I do to make you comfortable when we interact. Not you personally, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Little things from being the first to greet somebody, entering any room I'm entering with a smile, any store I'm entering to make sure that I greet the clerk, greeting police officers, you know, as when I see them. Just like I said, you know, worrying about my hair for no good reason. You know, going in a restaurant and over tipping because I need to give them a good impression of Black people. I want to change this. This waiter or waitress might have the perception that Black people don't tip or don't tip well, and I'm going to break that perception so that Black people get treated well in this restaurant. You know, there's little sort of burdens like that at sort of every corner of the road that I'm walking down. You know, going to school and sitting up straight, sitting, you know, in the front, not sitting in the back of the classroom, slouching down, paying attention, getting good grades, contributing to the conversation, trying to contribute so that they know that there is a contribution to be had, so that they know that there's something to listen to from my side of the room. And I dare say that my experience has not been as dramatic as many other people, you know, but there is definitely a lot of living life in common, especially along similar economic lines for white people and Black people. But I have to make clear that there's a whole other part of our lives that we have to live just to get by in the world that is trying to get rid of us, trying to squeeze us out. You know, I don't know if I'm saying it right.
I don't know if this is a fair parallel, yeah. But I do think that some of the things that come up,
yes,
are things that women also have to deal with, regardless of color, right? Mm-hmm. So you have a double whammy, right? You have to be, you know, like I was talking to a woman the other day, and she was saying that, you know, she works with all men in the construction industry. I know a lot of the folks from NABWIC, and, you know, she works with a lot of men in the construction industry, and she's always, you know, as a young person was like not wanting to be intimidated, not wanting to be too smart, right? You want to be. And so now she's in a situation where she's working with people. She needs to be, you know, respected, but she doesn't necessarily have a comfortable way for herself to be right and to make a point without being, you know, that bossy,
right, the aggressive
woman, that bitch, right?
Yes.
You're, you know, and so and so we act a certain way and we do things a certain way because we because women also
Yeah.
have
Trying to
women.
make it them comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and women also have a reputation for being bad tippers. And I think,
Oh, really?
yes, and I think that
Oh,
it's so
that's
funny you say that, because I'm like, well,
interesting.
when I'm in a restaurant with a
Yep.
girlfriend, I'm always like,
Mhm.
well, I have to make sure I give a good tip.
Make sure you gave a good tip. Yes. Yeah.
So
Oh, very interesting.
so
Yeah.
it's a thing,
Yeah.
that I
Mhm.
100%
Interesting.
understand where you're coming from with that, because I also
Yes.
feel the
Yeah.
same way. Like, well, women can't be, if you're going to be too smart, the boys aren't going to like you. And if you're
Right. Yes.
do
Yeah.
this, right? And so you have that.
Hmm.
So I 100% understand, and really how for you, how it must be twice as bad, obviously, because you've got the woman thing, you've got the black thing, and you're just like, and all we're all trying to do is just impress white men, like forget it, forget
Yes.
it.
They don't deserve they don't deserve our adulation. Half of them don't deserve it in the first
Exactly.
place. Yeah. Yeah.
But and
Yeah.
I can ask myself the same question about that I said to you earlier. What if, black women had always just had their hair that way? Well, what if women had just always say, look, we're smart, just deal with it, right?
Deal with it. Right.
That
Yeah. I
wasn't
know
a
what I'm
thing.
doing. Let me,
Yeah,
yeah.
that wasn't a thing.
Right. Yeah. It wouldn't have been yeah, it couldn't have had. Yeah. Yeah. You couldn't
Yeah.
have.
And women couldn't own property, and women couldn't vote.
Right. Right.
There are a
Yeah.
lot of parallels that maybe we could use to help people understand what you're dealing with.
I see. Yeah. So if a woman is talking about, why is it so hard? What's so hard? Then that's one sort of a way to help them feel the compassion that
Yeah,
this
a
is how
shared
it is. Yeah.
experience that could say, oh, I see, oh, I understand what you're talking about. Because you
And
do
then
walk
not.
well, as a woman, you walk into a room and people just assume, if you're an attractive woman, then you must be stupid, right?
Yes.
Because you can't be cute and have brains. No,
And
no, no,
smart.
no.
Yeah. No, no, it's true. Yeah. Yeah. Well, walking into a room, I'm sure you've heard all sorts of stories of, you know, a black man being at a party and people assume he's the waiter or something like that. These this sorts of thing. Or once I was going with a boyfriend of mine to a restaurant in Hyde Park, and it was a really good restaurant. We really liked it, and I was ahead of him, and I walked in like a good 10 paces ahead of him, and the woman at the hostess desk just looked up and said, "Oh, we're not hiring." And I was like, 6 o'clock on Saturday night. Who comes looking
Who
for an
the hell comes for
application
an interview on a Saturday night to a
on
restaurant?
Saturday night? But that was the first thing you thought of when you looked at me, lady? Like, come on.
Maybe because you're a famous pastry chef, she would
She
recognize
was like,
you.
"No, lady, we can't afford you."
That's exactly what she was thinking.
Yes, yeah. It's just so weird,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a little crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah. I know a common sort of argument for people who will tell a black person like, "Oh, I know this is difficult for you, but I've had that same experience. This has been hard for me too." And a black person can say, "Well, but you can change like they said, you can change your economic position. You can change your location. You can change things like that. And I can't change that I'm black. No matter what, when someone looks at me, that's what they see first." But yeah, for just in speaking, with a woman who has that sort of shared experience, I'm not sure what to say, except that what I would want is someone to acknowledge the stress and that sort of added burden of that. So I have to say that the same. It is a burden to be a woman and walk around and try to just get what's regular for everyone else.
Yeah, yeah,
Just go in and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you have to go walk right in and go right up to shake a hand and Yeah, the guys can walk in and mingle and have a drink, and you see on the jobs that we do, they can sit there and have 6 drinks. A woman can't sit there and have, she's
Right.
they're watching what she's drinking,
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but we have it too. I often, this whole implicit bias that, there's that, I don't know what it is. It's not like a riddle or a joke, but it's like a story where, the child, the boy and the child were in the I think it's that I don't know. Why am I a podcast host? I can't even flipping talk, So the kid is in an accident with his father, and
Yes.
he's brought to the hospital.
Oh, yes.
Right. And the punchline is that the doctor's is
Right. Yes. I'm
his mom,
the parent can't treat him. Yeah.
Right. I'm his parent. I can't treat him. You're like, well, what do you mean? And that's his mom.
He was in an accident with his father. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a woman doctor, and I still like, you know what I mean? You just make assumptions. Yeah. Like, absolutely. If someone says doctor, it's a guy in a white lab coat, white guy, white lab coat with the stethoscope sticking out of his pocket, right?
Yeah.
And we have to work to get over that, right?
And that's the stereotype we've been fed. That's the picture in all the picture books that we've had. I think something, I don't want to sound sort of like not competitive, that's not the word, confrontational. Something that makes it a little different for a Black person in these situations where you sort of, like you say, a woman runs into a glass ceiling, or you're not invited to the golf outing with the other executives, this sort of thing. But those things that happen to a woman, they don't put the woman's life in danger, where some of the biases and sort of obstacles that we run into, and incidents that happen to us can be dangerous to our lives, and for me, that's something that I had never fully grasped until I was a full adult too.
Yeah.
I've known being Black as an inconvenience. When I was in high school, my sister was driving with her white boyfriend in a small town near our town, and was pulled over, and the police officer took her out of the car and leaned in, looked at the boyfriend and said, "Why are you driving around with her kind?" While it's more than an inconvenience, but I never would have thought that her life was in danger. But now I see, oh, that could have gone really badly. Yeah. And that's, I think, the most timely example of, when being Black puts your life in danger. And this is something women struggle with too, but being at the doctor's office and not being taken seriously, or not given the time that you need, to explore your health and to understand, not being given the information that you need to understand what's going on with a diagnosis, or with even they might tell a Black woman, you have high blood pressure, you need to lower your blood pressure, and then not refer her to a dietitian. So there are not little things, but there is that element to it where at some point it endangers us. And I say us with a sort of a funny feeling, because I've not ever personally felt in danger from being Black. But seeing the images and knowing the stories of other people, I feel the fear,
Yeah.
But I feel like I have to be completely honest and say it's not something I've personally felt. And that part of that might be being a woman instead of being a man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, talking about the getting pulled over for no reason. I used to, back when we could go dancing.
Yes, yeah.
A
Those were
friend
the
and I
days.
had gone salsa dancing, and there were two young guys that we used to dance with, and we were giving them a ride home. So I was driving; they were in the back seat. My girlfriend was in the passenger seat, and we drove by a cruiser that was on the side of the road, and the guys are like, "Oh no, no," and I'm like,
Yeah.
I said, we didn't do anything,
You
they're
didn't do
not going to pull us
anything.
over. Sure enough, woo, woo, here come the lights. I'm like, I was so pissed off. I said, what the hell are you pulling us over? Blah, blah. And they're like, we want to see, they're asking for their ID and stuff like that. I said,
Oh,
they're not driving.
they're not
I'm
driving.
driving. It was,
Right.
I've never understood. I've never been confronted. Like, why the hell did we
Yeah.
got pulled over? You know what I mean? In the first place. And then they're asking
Yeah.
them for their ID.
Right. They're
I mean,
so
okay,
that's so innocent.
as it turned out, they were illegal, but
Oh,
but that doesn't
no.
matter, you know what I
They
mean?
didn't know that. Yeah.
Exactly.
They don't match
Exactly.
some description of some illegal murderer they've been looking for. There's no,
There was no
yeah,
reason,
no,
no reason at all for us to get
no
stopped.
reason. Yeah. No, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's really hard to comprehend.
Yeah.
And on the other end of that spectrum, I only learned recently, I only sort of came to put two and two together about Black people having an internalized fear or need to avoid police, in that, and I think a lot of people have learned now that a lot of police departments came out of slave catchers, people who
Oh,
made a
yeah.
living catching fugitive slaves and returning them. And there was a time where Black people there were signs up in towns that said, you don't have to talk to this person who's coming, because they will take anybody. You might not have been an ex-slave, but
Yeah.
they will take you anyway. And there
Yeah.
would be signs, don't talk to the police, don't talk to, which evolved over time to, you don't have to talk to the police, or,
Yeah.
it's something that I think has perhaps seeped into the psyche of each generation,
Yeah.
It's crazy. And for me, growing up the way I did, never had any sort of fear of the police. I came to Boston and raised my daughter. We'd walk through Forest Hill Station. I'd say hello to the officers. And we'd walk through, she'd say hi, they'd say hi, everything was fine. My brother, one of my brothers, he's Black, he's a police officer. I have only ever had positive experiences with the police personally. And I sort of like to say that I'm treated better by the police in Roxbury than the citizens of West Roxbury. That has been that's the crux of my situation.
The sad reality.
That's my sad reality. But unfortunately, for so many people, they've run into the police officers who are not the ones I've run into.
Yeah.
And it's not due to me just saying hello and hi and making nice with them. So I understand that horrible feeling. And I think also the more and more we see it, I'm not surprised I'm surprised white people aren't afraid of the police at this point, starting to see the things that we're seeing. It's scary, This is what we're seeing, what's happening that we're not seeing. All those years we didn't see stuff. Yeah.
Right. I know now everybody's got a cell phone, so it's a little harder to hide some of these things that have definitely been going on right along.
Right. Yeah. It's insane. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but as exhausted as we are, I think, and I think that everyone on the panel, I think we seem to have some hope too. Did you feel that there is?
Well, that's because
exciting.
I selfishly, deliberately chose people who are in general very positive people.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think, well, like Lucky was saying, he thinks this is the last big outbreak. This is the last time that people are going to be able to, it's like, you make progress, and then you get slapped down. But you don't, you never go all the way back.
You don't go all the way. Right. Yeah.
It's just a little bit of a, like the stock market, it's climbing, but it's not going to go back.
Right. Overall, you come out ahead. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do feel that it's sort of like secret little blessing that we've been able, that this came to a head during the coronavirus era, because people have had the time and energy to put to this, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody was at home watching it, right?
Seeing, we
Nobody
all
was at
saw,
work.
right? Yeah,
Nobody was
yeah,
at the theater.
right,
Nobody was
yeah,
at the
yeah.
movies.
Nobody said, I
Everybody
don't have
was
time to
home.
look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
exactly. Everybody had nothing but time
everybody had
to look
time
at
to
it and
see.
absorb it. And that was just
Yeah,
so over the top
yes, yes.
brutal. And I watched there's a whole bunch of links. If you're listening to this, there's a whole bunch of links on
Yes.
the website, which is getyourfillpodcast.com. And I'll send you a link to it, Sarah, so that you
Thank
can
you. Mhm.
hopefully share it with friends and stuff, because
Yes, I
I do
will.
think we had a great, I'm very grateful to have such interesting, wonderful people in my life that
Yeah, you
were
do.
willing to share and talk about this. And, you know, if no one else listens, at least I'm the better for it.
Absolutely. It's always helpful to be able to speak your mind and get things out there. You know, I was able to ask questions and get feedback, and um, it's only positive to, I think, to be able to, like you say, listen to each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's good.
But one of the links it's they did an analysis. One of the newspapers did an analysis of all the video footage that they could find from all the different cameras and tried to
Oh,
piece
right.
together what actually
Yes.
happened.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know,
Whole timeline.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, this stupid cop had his knee on this poor guy's neck for over like 9 minutes. I
Hmm.
mean, even when the paramedics came, he still kept his knee on his neck for a minute after the paramedics came. The guy was clearly,
After
you know,
they determined there was no pulse.
yeah. And the guy, you know, he's not moving, and the crowd is like yelling and saying, "What are you doing? You know, is he have a pulse? What are you, you know?"
Right.
Is a sick person.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I mean, you almost could, maybe this is me extrapolating it, but you almost could look in his eye and it looked like he had malice, you know, that he was, I mean, the guy was in the car and he comes out and rips him out of the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that about?
He was looking, yeah. It was very yeah, it was beyond what we had seen before. Yes. But I might say also it's not nearly what was going on with you know, the previous generations, when people were getting lynched and dismembered and mutilated, you know.
Exactly. But now we have cell phones.
But now, right now,
Well,
we're
it's like,
doing
you
this
know,
and
the
we can't.
Vietnam War was so different because suddenly war
Yeah.
was brought into people's living rooms. That's why there were war protests. That's why there was, right? People were
Hmm.
dying on the battlefield the whole time, but now it's in your living room. It's different.
Yeah.
And I think this is the same thing. Now we've got the footage. You know, you can tell someone abstractly, oh, this person was killed. And in your mind, you can think, oh, he probably did something, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because it's hard for us to understand that
Right.
someone could be
Yes.
so
Yeah. Yeah. And
brutal.
then you have to go a step further, but is that something worth taking? Is that something due the death penalty? You know, is that something due, you know, the taking his bodily autonomy from him like that in such an egregious way? You know, yeah.
No,
So
no, there's no reason. I mean, and at the end of the day, he allegedly passed a $20 counterfeit bill. When did that become a killing offense, right?
right, right. Yeah, that's not, yeah. When did that become an offense where you get arrested so, you know,
Yeah.
does that happen? Do they call you? Do they call the police and they come and take you in like that? I don't know what the usual procedure is,
I have no
but
idea.
it's certainly not that.
Pretty sure it's not death by suffocation in the street.
Yeah, it's insanity. Uh,
Yeah.
that it's gonna take a lot to dig out from, but we'll get there. People will.
Yeah. I don't know. But I think that on the other side, it makes it easier for us, you know, again, us people who, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, people who didn't do that, to
Mm-hmm.
say, oh my God, that person's just a nut, no one would ever do that. And to distance yourself from that person and
Right, right. He's definitely a nut. He's definitely not a normal person. He's not okay. But he's operating within a system that allows him to do that.
he wasn't alone,
Right,
you
right.
know, there were 3 other cops standing right there. Well, there are 3 other cars worth of cops,
Yes.
presumably in pretty
Yeah,
close
people were
proximity.
blocking the street. People were, yes, yeah,
And
yeah.
somebody,
Oh, yeah.
nobody had the courage to come up and, basically lift the guy off,
Yes, yeah.
which is probably what it
Which,
would have taken.
yes, yeah, Um, and I think that's sort of goes to the point of we have to admit that this is systemic, this is ingrained, this is institutionalized. It's the system, and we have to dismantle or change from in any way we can. We have to get at it and get it, maybe not even reformed, like my daughter says. Maybe we have to start completely over. But at this point, yeah, I don't think anyone in their right mind can deny that this is the system. It's working the way it was designed to work, because it does protect people like him. Not him at this point, because he's going to face, well, it protected him up to a point, but
He had
it
17
general does.
complaints, apparently.
Yes, see, yeah, holy
Yeah,
cow.
yeah,
Yeah,
that he should have been stopped a long time before this ever happened.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's a nut that they let him keep rolling around out there. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
And he had advanced to a certain level too. He wasn't like I don't think he was like a, foot patrol guy.
Right,
He
he's
was,
right. He wasn't on. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, he had some sort of stature within the
yeah. Mm. Mhm.
precinct, right? So whatever he was doing, not just ignored,
Right, right.
maybe even rewarded.
You reward. Yeah, and this is what happens when you reward that kind of behavior.
Right, exactly.
Don't jump in and yeah, yeah. So like they say, they will not have died in vain. I think that they will not have died in vain. The you can feel the movement.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. I was gonna say it's kind of great. It is great. Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much. I'm so excited and happy and grateful that you participated in this.
Oh, you're very welcome. I enjoyed our conversation after too, so that I
Me
appreciate
too.
I using your platform to contribute, really. I was telling someone the other day, how I feel frustrated and powerless. I don't know what to do. But sometimes there's just power in your presence and showing up and being there and sharing your experience. So thanks for providing for us all, for sharing your platform.
Thank you. This is probably going to become like, I don't know, three episodes.
That's terrific.
We've kind of gone beyond my 35 minutes.
35-minute episode, yes. Well, it's one of those things that, yeah, it has to. We have to acknowledge that it's not it's bigger than anything else we've looked at and talked about and dealt with before.
So what did we decide is the solution? Just to...
I don't know if we decided the solution, but I think we all agree we have work to do. We gotta keep, we're gonna,
we're gonna become neighbors.
we
and we're
can
gonna talk
within our
more.
own, within our own, sphere of influence, as Wyman said.
Yes, yeah. And actually, that's Kimberly said that to me this morning too.
Yeah.
That, we have to use our sphere of influence to just change, to enlighten as many people as possible.
Yes, yeah. Because they'll turn around and talk to the next person and the next
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what's that with the mustard seeds? You throw them out and they won't all take, they won't all grow. But if you throw them out there,
Yeah.
you
If you
have to.
throw enough seeds, some of
Yes,
them are gonna
yes.
some
Some
are
of them
gonna
are gonna.
germinate.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So we do. Yeah. And we get strength from each other, knowing we're all there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
oh.
something that I envy, actually, the community, the Black community, how much of a community that it is. It's funny. I volunteer with the AMC, the Appalachian Mountain Club, and they had like I think it was either the winter or the spring hiking program.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, there aren't a lot of Black people who take the
Right.
spring hiking program. I don't think there are a lot of Black people who hike, and it's extra walking. What's the big attraction?
Right.
But yeah, so I saw this. There was one Black kid, young kid, who came in, and he sat like sort of off by himself. And then a Black lady came in, and she went over to him immediately and just touched him on the shoulder and introduced herself, and just, I just want you to know that you're not the only one. I didn't hear what they said.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But, it was just a white person wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
We don't have that community. We don't have that shared. Do you know what I mean? We're just all on our own.
Yeah.
Like what Lucky was saying, we're all on our own.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You meet a Latino person, the first thing they want to say is, where are you from? Like, because you're from this island, I'm from this
right.
island.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, you didn't. No, that's true. Well, I think this is just my observation. I don't know, but I think part of Black people coming together and having a community is out of necessity, and out of a shared love of a culture that we don't get to see in the everyday, but also something sort of interesting in my life is when I first came to Boston and Black people would call me sister. I did not like it. I found it offensive. I'm not your sister. Why are you trying to be overly familiar with me? I did not like it. And now I find it so endearing, a comfort, a belonging, a respect now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I come to understand it. Yeah. But I did not like that at first. Yeah, but I think it's a community of necessity. I mean, drawing strength from each other. Yeah. It's good.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
It is. Oh, good. Well, you take care, Chris.
You too, Sarah. Hopefully I'll see you on the job sometime soon.
Someday.
Oh, God.
I didn't get an email from Amy this week. Who knows what's going on?
Sorry, nothing's changed. Have a nice day.
Changed email. Yeah. Now I think something's changed.
I know, exactly. Yeah.
We'll see. All right.